throw fire on the oil and to threaten the stability and provoke and create looting and destruction and fires, and to block roads and attack national possessions and public and private possessions, and attacks on some diplomatic missions on Egypt. We are living together difficult days, and what hurts our hearts the most, and the fear which has overtaken most Egyptians, and the anxiety which has overtaken them regarding what tomorrow will bring for them and their families, and the future and destiny of their country. The events of the last few days impose on us all, as people and as a leadership, choosing between chaos and stability, and brings in front of us new circumstances and a different Egyptian reality, which our people and our army must deal with in the most wise of way in order to protect Egypt's interests and its children. My brothers and sisters, citizens, I have initiated the formation of a new government with new priorities and initiatives which will respond to our young people's demands and their anxieties. And in dialogue with all political forces, we have discussed all the issues that have been raised regarding democratic and political reforms and the constitutional changes which they will require in order to fulfill these legitimate demands and the restoration of stability and security. But there are political forces who have rejected this invitation for dialogue, holding on to their private agendas and without concern for Egypt's situation, and with their rejection for my invitation to dialogue, which is still on. I will directly speak to my people, from its peasants, workers, Muslims and Copts, its old people and its young people, and to all Egyptian men and women in the countryside and in the cities across the land and in all the districts. I never wanted power or prestige, and people know the difficult circumstances in which I shouldered the responsibility and what I have given to the homeland during war and during the peace. I am also a man of the army, and it is not in my nature to give up responsibility. My first responsibility now is to restore the security and stability of the homeland, to achieve a peaceful transition of power in an environment that will protect Egypt and Egyptians, and which will allow for the responsibility to be given to whoever the people will elect in the forthcoming elections. I will say with all honesty and without looking at this particular situation that I was not intent on standing for the next elections, because I have spent enough time in serving Egypt, and I am now careful to conclude my work for Egypt by presenting Egypt to the next government in a constitutional way which will protect Egypt. I want to say in clear terms that in the next few months that are remaining of my current reign, I will work very hard to carry out all the necessary measures to transfer power to the authorized, legitimate. The constitutional items 77 and 76 should be changed according to allow very specific periods for presidency, and in order for the parliament to be able to discuss these constitutional changes and the legislative changes which of the laws linked to the constitution, and in order to guarantee that all political powers will contribute to these discussions, I ask of the parliament to commit to speed up the elections. I will pursue the transfer of power in a way that will fulfill the people's demands, and that this new government will fulfill the people's demands and their hopes for political, economic and social progress, and for the provision of employment opportunities and fighting poverty and achieving social justice. And in this context, I want to ask the police to carry out their role in protecting the citizens honestly and to respect their rights and freedoms and their dignity. I also want to ask censorship authorities and legislative authorities to carry out immediately every measure to pursue those who are corrupt and those who have been responsible for what has happened, of all the destructive acts and looting and fires that have taken place in Egypt. This is my promise for the people during the next few months that remain of my current leadership. I ask of God that He will help me to do my job in a way that will be satisfactory to God and to my homeland and its people. Egypt will come out of these difficult circumstances stronger than it used to be before, more confident, more united and more stable. Our people will become much more aware of its own self-interest and more careful not to sacrifice its destiny and its stability. Hosni Mubarak, who's speaking to you today, is proud of all the long years he spent in the service of people of Egypt. This dear country is my country, just like it is the homeland of every Egyptian man and woman. I have lived in this country, I have fought for it, I have defended its sovereignty and interest, and I will die on its land, and history will judge me and others. The homeland will remain, and people will disappear, and Egypt will always remain, and its flag will always be high. And it is our duty to achieve this with dignity and honor, generation after generation. May God protect this homeland and its people, and peace be upon you, and God's mercy and blessings.
And there you have it, the Egyptian President, Hosni Mubarak, saying pretty much what we expected him to say, that he will not be standing again to be president of Egypt at the next elections in September. Let's listen to the reaction in Tahrir Square.
history unfolding.
It
I
is
think it's
indeed,
safe to say.
yeah.
I mean, hundreds, if not possibly thousands of Egyptians in Tahrir Square, day 8 of these demonstrations, and they've been watching. You could see on the left-hand side of the screen, they had been watching Egyptian state television and the breaking news that Hosni Mubarak just made. The people have spoken. He is reacting. He will not be seeking presidency come September. But the other key part that I was listening for is the transitional government. It's still 8 months until September, and it sounded to me, Michael Holmes, that he plans to oversee that transition.
That's it. That's what we've been predicting was going to happen based on what we knew, and that is something that is not going to be acceptable to a lot of people. This is a pivotal moment, obviously, a happy people there in Tahrir Square, pivotal moment in this uprising, and indeed, as you said, in modern Egyptian political history, if you like. One crucial thing that I thought came out of that was he said, I was not intent on standing for the next elections, basically saying, well, I wasn't going to stand anyway. So is that going to be enough to placate the people who are now cheering when they look at it all in context? No better people to ask that of than our longtime Cairo bureau chief Ben Wiedemann and my colleague Hala Garani standing by there in Cairo, really literally above all of this. Guys, I hope you can hear us. Your take on that speech, not unexpected content-wise, a little bit perhaps defensive. You'll read.
Yeah, it was definitely defensive, but really he went through a lot of points which are on the list of demands of the protests. He's talking about, first of all, not running again in September as president. He's talking about limited presidential terms. He's talking about judicial reviews of the November-December parliamentary elections, many of which were contested in the courts. What's interesting, however, regarding those elections is that much of the opposition, with the exception of the Muslim Brotherhood, boycotted those elections in the first place. So they may be rather unhappy with that particular aspect. But by and large, he did really make a huge step down in that speech. And he made a few other interesting points. He stressed his long years of service, dedication as a soldier and as president of the Republic toward the country, and he said that I will die in the land of Egypt, which sends a clear message that he's not going to be another Zain al-Abidin Ben Ali of Tunisia, who ran away to Saudi Arabia. He's going to stay in Egypt regardless of what happens. So quite a step down, but he's still, keeping his dignity in that speech. Michael?
Hala, got to bring you in there quickly too. The people's reaction, obviously effusive to this initial speech.
Well, absolutely. You could hear the roar of the crowd from our live shot position here, which is several hundred meters away. They had a large screen where they were all able to watch the presidential speech. But now the big test, and you mentioned this before coming to us, Michael, the big test is going to be tomorrow. Is this enough to satisfy the protesters, many of whom told me a few hours ago, I will not be happy unless he steps down. We don't want him to say he won't run for re-election. We want him to say he is leaving. But based on the crowd reaction tonight, and also based on the fact that, as Ben mentioned there, many concessions were made despite the defensive nature of the speech, it is possible to imagine that this will take the sting, the passion out of the protests that we've seen so far, Michael.
All right, Hala Garani and Ben Wiedemann there on the spot. Brooke?
And I think what was being pointed out to us, someone speaking Arabic, what they're chanting there is they're saying, we're not leaving Thursday, we're not leaving Friday, we're not leaving. So I'm not sure if what's being lost perhaps in translation is that these perhaps are not cheers. Maybe that announcement wasn't good enough.
If indeed that's an accurate translation of the reaction after the speech, then yeah, they're not happy.